Hey, gang, welcome back. It's Members Only Thursday today. It's 3:33 p.m. That's a special number on the East Coast, and it's Thursday, the day after I had to postpone Members Only Wednesday, which makes it Members Only Thursday. So welcome, members. Welcome, everybody. Cosmic Serpent, what's going on? What is it? There's a Lucas. Welcome aboard? There's a Lucas, new member. Wrath of Conteven, Mr. Doubtfire. Great to see everybody. Cool. Bob Bigelow did an interview with George Knapp. Turns out, from what I could gather, George is hosting or helping Bigelow launch his own podcast. And this is the official second episode of this podcast. And it's amazing for all the best reasons. Firstly, let me see if I can share this with you. Let's do this. Can I do this? There you go. We can do this. Firstly, this room. Take a look at this room. I guess this is his office or a conference room, or I don't know what this is, but this room is amazing. And I so want there to be a safe behind this painting. Whatever this painting is back here, I want him to go over there and open it up. And it's like a hidden safe back there. And inside this safe is like element 115 or something really cool and spooky. But this interview was so cool. Great room. Robert Bigelow and George Knapp are my two favorite people in this space now. And this is my new favorite podcast. You can forget about almost every other podcast, including mine. Just whatever these guys do, just pay attention and watch this. Firstly, it's amazing to watch the two of them just hang out because they're so funny together. And it's like the grizzled old journalist and the billionaire super geek engineered nerd who's really into life after death and UFO studies. And they just unpack so much in this talk. They really set out to explain kind of the history behind the AAWSAP program and what exactly happened there. But it didn't take long before the whole interview takes a turn into the woo hardcore. And they start talking about the research that Bigelow has funded and overseen on whether or not consciousness survives physical death. And he goes into some detail explaining his belief around that, which is really interesting and dovetails nicely into a lot of things that other people have talked about, including another one of my favorite interviewers, Jeffrey Mishlove on New Thinking Aloud, who they talk about in this interview. And what is it called? The theory of everything. What's the guy's name? He looks like Santa Claus. It's a NASA physicist. My big toe, my big theory of everything. Simulation theory, more or less. So he gets into some of this stuff. And according to Bigelow, it is the fundamental truth really at the bottom of this whole thing that they have tapped into. And this episode lands like an episode of Blue's Clues. It's one of those read between the lines kind of things. And you can tell that George Knapp is kind of hand-holding Bigelow through this and teasing out a lot of really cool information. So I want to look at some clips from this interview and talk to you guys about what exactly they get into, because it is fascinating stuff. And before we go there, if you're interested, I'm going to paste this link in the chat. This is a link that you're going to see come up right now. Boop. That is for an interview that Bigelow did with Jeffrey Mishlove on New Thinking Aloud about, I want to say it was like 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. About this study that he's going to be talking about, the afterlife consciousness study. But the long and the short of it is, And forgive me, it's about 150 degrees in my office today. I'm doing this one a little bit later in the afternoon than I normally do. It's actually quite a bit hotter. So, too hot for TV, as they say. So we're not doing coffee today. We're doing Sapporo in a refrigerated mug. By the way, do me a favor and hit that like button if you haven't already, and consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber. We just crossed the 50,000 subscriber threshold, and oh my God, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world. Yay us, by the way. Go team. We did it. We made it past 50,000, and I'm really proud of this group. You guys have been doing amazing work. So thank you for sharing the episodes and for commenting and for being involved in the chat and just hanging out with us, because that's what makes it all work. You guys are the best. And today's chat is members only. The stream is public, but the chat is members only. And that's because the members are what make this channel possible. And I can't thank you guys enough, really. If you kick in a couple of bucks a month to support this channel, it means that you really care and that you get some value out of these conversations. And that means everything. The whole point of the channel, the whole reason I started it in the first place, was because I felt like I just didn't have a good forum to discuss this stuff. And I didn't have a place where I could connect with other people who were geeking out as hard as I was about the whole UFO thing. And so I had some spare time and I had some spare equipment, and I thought I would throw up a few episodes and just kind of talk openly about this. And before I knew it, it had grown to what is now over 50,000 subscribers and a thriving community of really interesting and cool people. And some of the coolest and best friends that I've made in a long time have been in this community since we launched this show. So thanks to all of you for making it possible. You guys are the best. And Dana, yes, I'm working on the decaf coffee. I promise that is coming. I just have to dial in the one that I really think is going to match the original coffee. So Dana, in a comment earlier, asked about the decaf coffee, which we're working on in the lab. We also, I have to give a huge thank you to our special projects division members. These guys are the best. We, over on the Patreon, we have a group called the Special Projects Division, and that is a small group that is limited to 50 people that meets once a month. We have a conference call, and in that conference call, we talk about all kinds of stuff. We talk about the channel, we talk about the show, we talk about projects that we're working on, we talk about how we actually do some of the work that we do. And one of the things that we just recently did, and we're going to be completing it this weekend, is we started a 2-part course with Laura Ackerman on raw clotting, which is a technique for using AI, specifically in this case, Claude, to become about 150 times more productive than you've ever been in your life. And it is astonishing. She has invented this system that is open source. It doesn't cost anything. Once you are up and running and you're using it, you can just, it will grow with you and expand and mold itself to your work style. I've been using it on this channel for about, I'm coming up on a month now. And it has completely changed the way that I work. And the short, very simple version is, and it takes a little while to wrap your mind around this, but the short version is raw clotting gives your AI a scaffolding to grip onto and a resource kind of base to work from that is on your computer. So as you're using your AI to do research on different things, like an interview like this one, or it could be anything really. News stories that you want to follow, or deep dives that you want to dig into. As the AI is doing all of that research, it has a place to put its findings, and it actually has a file structure, and it's almost like having an executive assistant with a fully furnished office that's ready to go with all of your information, and they just know where everything is. So In a typical user AI relationship, you ask it a question, it'll give you an answer. And if you're really clever, you'll ask it a very clever question and it'll give you a more clever answer. And if you're really, really clever, you'll have a complicated prompt that's like 3 or 4 paragraphs with all this detail built into it. And you'll send it to your AI and it will come back with a very complicated response. Raw clotting is not like that at all. And this is a system where you basically build a relationship with your AI and you talk to it just the way you would talk to any assistant who would work with you on a project. And you develop, it's amazing to watch. As you use it, it gets to know you and it gets to know the way that you work. It understands the way that you communicate. It understands the way that you think. You can help it understand. You can give it instructions and you can start to build this relationship. And eventually, over a period of a few days, you develop a shorthand with the AI. Or I should say, rather, it develops a shorthand with you. And I've been struggling with how to explain this to people because it is so new. It's such a new type of work that it's like having a bicycle for deep work, right? Like if you think of how far you can go on foot. If you were going to walk from place A to place B, how far could you walk on foot? How far could you go on a bicycle? How fast could you get there? How fluidly could you move through traffic? And could you coast? It's like that, but for thinking. You have a partner and you can toss back and forth projects and ideas with it, and then it will continue to find connections laterally across all of the different things that you're working on. As it grows, its understanding, it starts to learn how to connect the dots that you can't see. So for someone like me, that's a creative person, and that is, I get excited when I'm making something. I have to be like actively creating something to really feel in the zone. But I'm really bad at remembering a lot of, disparate details that are spread over a bunch of different things and then kind of keeping them top of mind, right? Like I can focus really hard on one thing and get into the zone. Raw clotting is like having an extra part of my brain that sort of plugs in and just does all of the hard stuff that I am not really good at naturally anyway, right? So it's not like it's thinking for me. It's I'm offloading things that would be frustrating and I would probably avoid anyway doing, and I'm giving it to the system and it's able to handle all that stuff. But the best part about it is all of this information has a place to go that's not inside of a chat window. So as I'm working, and I know this is hard to explain, but you build up a deep reservoir that you can call upon at any time of information. So you can just ask your assistant, hey, what's that show we did 2 weeks ago on XYZ? It will look at the transcript. It'll know. It'll come back and say, oh, yeah, that's the show you did on da-da-da. And it gives me all that detail. So the net result is I'm able to be way more free with my creativity and let the machine do a lot of the drudgery stuff. And I'll say it like this. It's what you want your AI to be like. It's what you would expect an AI to be able to do for you based on what the way Hollywood has represented, like what AI should be able to do. This actually makes it possible. So the point is, it's a very long-winded explanation. The point is that Laura Ackerman developed this process. It's called raw clotting. She was gracious enough and cool enough to come and teach me how to do it and give me the harness to basically set it all up. I've been using it. I immediately told the people in our Patreon tier, the special projects division, about it, and they were super excited. We arranged a class. Laura came out and taught that class, and we're going to do our second round on Saturday, our second round of this course. And as a matter of fact, I just got a message a few minutes before we started the show from someone who's doing it, using the system right now, and she was just blown away by how amazing it is. This is all to tell you that if you're interested in this kind of thing and you want to learn more about kind of what we do, and we're going to be doing a lot more with AI tools as we go forward. One of the things I'm going to start doing is teaching workshops on how I use the various AI tools that I use to build the channel and how what my workflow looks like, which tools actually make sense, how much to spend on those tools, and just generally give you sort of a toolkit for how I do the types of things that we do here. So if you're interested in that, you want to be a part of this stuff, you can go to teamnightshift.com. You can hit on special projects division. There's a link there. It'll take you to the Patreon. You can become a member of that tier, and then we'll send you the link, and you can join us on our conference call once a month, and we'll talk about all that stuff. Okay, so what else is going on? Bigelow and George Knapp, amazing. We talked about special projects. We talked about the members. We talked about the 50,000 barrier. We crossed it. What else is going on? How are you guys? How's everybody out there? Geraldine says Bigelow is a very interesting man and is totally cool. I agree. It's tool agnostic. Yes, it is tool agnostic. It doesn't have to be Claude, but right now Claude works really well, and I'm using Claude. Jason Richter, can you do this with GPT-2? Okay, so here's the coolest part. Yes, you should be able to do it with any AI. This is the idea, right? So the way that it's set up is such that hypothetically, if there's enough of a core user group that can really iterate on this and help figure out how to solve some of the interesting challenges about making it more streamlined, like this is ground floor day one level stuff that's really, really fresh. Like this is a super new, fresh way of doing all of this stuff. It's so new that no one knows how to do it yet, except for this very small group. But it's blowing their minds. And the idea is that you could plug in any AI into a system like this, and it would perform as that AI performs, but it would do essentially the same style of work that we're doing with raw clotting. So ultimately, the goal would be to be able to run off of your own box in your office, have your own hardware running a open source AI system that exists outside of the corporate structure, plugged into a raw clotting stack that can basically turn you from, I mean, it's the difference between literally like Googling one thing at a time and having a team of assistants that can do all that shit for you and just process it all. It is like having a staff of 10 people. It's that cool. Hopefully that answers your question, but you can do it with a lot. J-Man, it's so kick-ass. I've gotten more done in the last 3 days than in months. It is so kick-ass. Spicy harness. Yes, it is a spicy harness. Who else? I'm just looking at all your comments here while I pause. Forgive me. I love all the Nordics. I just don't love their music, Brian Park. Paul Panda. Yeah, talk shit. The Chinese one whoops the Western AI's ass. Yeah, the Chinese open source models are pretty impressive. I think they're going to start to really become the standard open source Chinese models. Eyes 42. Thanks for the super duper chat. That's awesome. Rhymes with Schmigelow. Yeah. Let's take a look at this Bob Bigelow interview. Let's break it down. I want to show it to you guys, and we'll just walk through it piece by piece. So we have this fucking awesome room, which is amazing. And you can see he's got this big book stack of hardbound books right here. This represents the consciousness research program that he funded. I think he spent like almost $2 million funding this research program. And within these volumes are the research proposals that were submitted for that project. He's going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then on the table here are Jim Lacatski's books. Skinwalkers at the Pentagon is over here by George, and then he's got two other ones over here. And they're going to lean heavily into those books and Lacatski's work as we get into this. So let me just start with the craziness. Consciousness and physics. Take a listen.
of things. This goes into the consciousness aspect of physics and everything. That is a really interesting domain to talk about, which is foundational to everything, George. It's consciousness ultimately is responsible for everything in the universe that you can think of. Everything.
Consciousness is here before the universe is here, you think?
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
that's
No, you
all
opened
right.
up the box. Wait a second. Okay.
They're like the old guys in the Muppets that are in the box in the opera house. They're like the two old guys. They're hilarious. I love watching these guys.
First of all, we have proof that you survived your container, which is a huge friggin' step for people to digest that. If you have certain religious backgrounds, or you're a confirmed staunch atheist, or maybe a staunch agnostic kind of person, you can't digest this. It's very difficult to swallow it and try to understand it. If you're a researcher and extensively, it matters a lot. And also if you've had demonstrations, personal demonstrations and exhibitions of things, it really helps. And sometimes you recall what you witnessed and what you saw, and you just say, did that really happen? Yeah, it really happened. Those things really happened, multiple different kinds of things. And so the thing of it is, the probability, my opinion is, the universe is an open system. It's not closed. It's not finite, which means it didn't have a beginning. Open systems don't have a start and a stop. It's not a finite system. It's open. It's the consciousness aspect is that we have on the table over here the results from a contest that we initiated in 2021. It took the entire year. And it was about proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the survival of permanent bodily death is real.
That we go on.
And so you become a function of thought. And so you say, well, how is that possible without a body, without a container? That's impossible. It's not. And you have to get into all kinds of things that thought is very powerful. And it's not just because of the Heisenberg double slit experiment in quantum mechanics. That's the bare tip of the iceberg. That is, Dr. Bob John and Brenda Dunn in the basement of the chemistry building in Princeton had their laboratory on being able to have a computer screen that had a static line across the screen. And this was a really simple experiment, but a lot of fun. And then you had a random event generator causing a second line to occur. And those electrons are being flipped 1,000,000 times a second by the random event generator. So it should always be 50-50. The line is equal. It's not deviating in that. So if you're sitting there concentrating, if you're trying to concentrate, you can make a deviation in that line above the static or below the static line. And it works. And he had hundreds of thousands of trials. He had a lot of the students there from Princeton doing those trials. And he wrote a terrific book on this. Okay, this is just an elementary, basic kind of understanding that consciousness can have an effect on inanimate, on material products, on materials, by just pure observation, you can have an effect on subatomic particles. I'll put it that way. That's the appropriate vernacular. And you cause deviations according to your intent. So consciousness has an effect in our dimension that we can initiate through various other kinds of things. Clairvoyance, precognition, remote viewing, mediumship. There are a lot of ways that not all mediums are fraudulent. And there's some gold star remote viewers. and SRI, Stanford Research Institute, and friends of ours that we know, Hal Puthoff and Kit Green, were very involved in that. And they studied people like Uri Geller for extensively, and phenomenal performers. And one of the things they learned that's kind of fun is that most people have the ability to function to produce anomalous results that our normal five senses shouldn't be able to produce. And you're not using those, you're using a sixth kind of sense.
Okay, let's pause there for a minute. This is at the core of his whole thesis, and it lines up with something that we picked up on about 2 years ago, because he said it in the interview with Jeffrey Mishlove, which, as I understand, Jesse Michaels also just recently interviewed Jeffrey Mishlove. But on the Mishlove New Thinking Aloud podcast, he talked about this study in detail, and I linked to that earlier. I'll repost that link in case anybody wants to check this out. I highly recommend you watch it. It's about, I want to say about an hour and a half, hour and 22 minutes. And he details how the study was actually performed and what they did. But basically, they were able to prove to his satisfaction that consciousness survives physical death. And according to Robert Bigelow, that is the baseline, the foundational truth at the bottom of the whole UFO mystery, right? So you have a cycle of life and death, but we only are aware of this one half of it. What if that cycle, if consciousness survives physical death, and there's a process that there are consciousnesses that exist outside or independent of a physical body, then that means that there's a strata of intelligence that goes all the way up. And that's kind of what he's talking about. And he says that a lot of the UFO technology that they are looking at is directly tied to this principle. In other words, something to do with that realization unlocks a branch of the technology tree, and imagine a very spiritually advanced, very old civilization that was technologically advanced and spiritually advanced, and was able to build technology that operated on these principles and used these principles. What you would get would look a lot like some of the things that are described in UFO research. And he goes on to say that the paranormal aspects of what people experience, like precognition, seeing things from the future or seeing things from the past, ghosts and poltergeists and this type of thing, are just the bleed through of these non-physical realities that coexist in the same space that just we were blind to. And that you have a sixth sense ability to interact with this consciousness field that's all around you. Most people can do it innately, just sort of like most people could thrash around in the water and probably swim, but not everybody's a swimmer. Same kind of thing. And according to him, that's and his cohort of people, which includes Jim Lacatski, that's the core. He even used the term indigestible. That's the indigestible part of it, or the thing that people would have a hard time digesting. I don't know if that was intentional, or maybe that was just a choice of words that he went with. But that's what Jim Semivan said about the truth of the UFO reality. It was indigestible, and you couldn't describe this to someone because it would just be too much. And that could be one of those things. If you could prove that consciousness survives physical death, then there's a barrier, and there's another world beyond that barrier. And on the other side of that barrier, that world has beings in it that interact with each other and with us. And that would explain all of these historical accounts of angels and demons and spirits and poltergeists and all of these strange occurrences of, precognition and psychic phenomenon and all of this stuff. And it would act as kind of a unifying principle to house all of these other disparate sort of experiences that seem to be all over the place and made up for, different things, right? Like ghosts and UFOs don't intuitively seem like they would fit into the same category unless you begin with the base assumption that consciousness is all that there is. And if you start there, and that's kind of where he's going with this, and we'll talk about that in a second. That's where Jeffrey Mishlov's essay goes. But if you start there, it kind of solves a lot of those problems. So he's thinking this is some kind of this is the key to the whole thing. But even that is not the most exciting, interesting thing that he talks about in this interview. That is just one piece of it. I want to go back and let him finish this thought because it is really interesting. And then we'll come back and do some comments. Hang on.
So back to the universal situation. If you have a universe that never had a beginning and never had an end, and you still have a mystery of things moving away, which is fine until the Hubble became antiquated, because it can only see out about 13.5 billion light years. Well, the Webb telescope goes 34 billion light years, and then it becomes very difficult for the theory. And remember, Big Bang is just a theory. It's not fact. It has nothing to do with fact. I'll tell you maybe about a conversation I had with Michio Kaku for about an hour on the God equation book that he wrote. Interesting thing there. Anyway, so you have something that falls apart as a Big Bang, as a theory of a beginning. And there never was a satisfactory theory about that at all. And it took about, 11 different theories for string theory to be able to function, to close the donut, to close the loop, to make it work. And they used hand calcs, which is a euphemism for forcing the math to work. And they made up the constants as to what.
Look at that giant hookah behind him. He looks like he's going to open a little hookah shop in Brooklyn.
Existed pre-bang. And so because you had a particle, you're saying that everything was created from nothing, and something that was very, very small, smaller than a sugar cube. And that later expanded, but you're not exactly sure how it expanded. And you have no explanation for where did the instructions come from to cause the expansion. And by the way, where did the initial cube come from?
Yeah.
And you're talking about a density of mass that is impossible.
Okay, so he's calling into question the whole concept of the Big Bang as an explanation for the material universe that as we know it and understand it so far. He's saying that according to his conversation with Michio Kaku, there are all kinds of reasons why it doesn't make sense, and that the theories as they exist today are massaged very aggressively to fit the way that they're written with some hand calculations, hand calcs, as he calls it, to sort of fill in a few gaps in the data, right? So they have to have a few assumptions, and one of them is like, if you can, what is the big one? If you just grant one wish, physics can explain everything. Isn't that how it goes? If you can just let them have the Big Bang and that you just don't question that, just let that be, then everything else starts to make sense. He's saying that's not the case at all. He's saying that according to the calculations that he's seen and the explanation and research that he's looked at, entropy should have evaporated everything by now, and there is order, yet there is order to the universe that seems to run counter to what we would suspect given the nature of entropy. So there's something else going on there. He's going to go into a little more detail and explain this, but let's take a pause here and look at some of your comments. I see you guys are blowing up in the chat here. Hang on, let's take a look. Toxic Fart, thanks for the super chat. Can't wait for the Bigelow Podcast merch. I want the mustache trimmer. Clint, you rule. Thanks. Yeah, that's a straight razor. This is what he's doing. He's doing the pencil thin So what you do is see here. I've got Chris Ramsey's pencils here. This is the Majestic 12. I don't know if you can see this pencil. He does pencils. He's also got I have the whole Ramsey kit over here, but it's a straight razor. And so you gotta get in here. Hang on, which angle? And just take this little top part down. And then you get the pencil thin jobby that he's got. It's very slick. Love the look. Great hair. It's got great hair. Cool chair. The thing I like most about Bob Bigelow is that he looks the way, I don't know if this is going to make sense to anybody else, but in the 80s, there were a lot of shows about like Airwolf, like a super helicopter, or Knight Rider, a super car that could talk. And it was like this amazing supercar. And there was always, in shows like that, there was always this like character of the eccentric billionaire who would like wear like a white suit and had like an eye patch or like a weird mustache. And this billionaire always owns some kind of weird company or organization that no one really understood what they did, but somehow they just fought crime or like, fought corruption or whatever it is they do. And to do that, they needed a talking car that could do all kind of drive through walls and shit. And Bigelow, to me, fits the archetype of the 1980s television show eccentric rich guy who is also brilliant and has his finger on the pulse. And he's so much better. Like if I had to pick a billionaire to hang out with, not that that's ever been a problem for me, but if I had to, it would be Bob Bigelow. Forget Elon. Forget all these other guys. Zuckerberg, whatever. Bigelow is proving that there's consciousness after death, that life goes on, that there is contact with other intelligences that's ongoing. He is doing some really interesting stuff with space habitats, which we'll get to in a minute. And he knows everybody. He knows everybody. He's completely dialed in. When he talks about his network in a little bit, it's pretty mind-blowing. Dana says, more and more I'm beginning to believe that humans are the interdimensionals. This is what the NHI have been trying to convey. Great comment. Well, if consciousness survives physical death, then what is a human? Is a human the human animal, the physical body, the human animal, is that what we are? Or are we this energy field made up of pure thought that exists as sort of an information cloud plugged into some kind of greater consciousness? If consciousness survives physical death, then consciousness is just, you can't assign all of these other human qualities to a person so much as you'd have to look beyond that at their, I guess, their soul, if you want to use that word, as the ultimate true representation of that being. In which case, if that was the case, then it might be such that our idea of what an advanced civilization might be is completely wrong. Could be. Maybe it's not technology like they're further along the same tech tree as we are. Maybe they're on a completely different branch of a completely different tech tree built on a totally different understanding. And that understanding may be one that you only get to if you don't annihilate your planet and your civilization can endure for a few 100,000 years, long enough for you to reach the level of spiritual wisdom and maturity to understand all of these things. And that unlocks a level of power over the universe that you would otherwise never be able to attain. These are just shower thoughts, but it could always change. We are Magic Russ says, remember, Bigelow's whole driving force came from his parents being abducted. I didn't know that. Were his parents abducted? Cujo JK says, our bodies are cocoons, incubators. It's a spacesuit for exploring the third dimension, more or less. It's a container. Your consciousness basically enters this lower vibrational realm for a period of 80 years, 100 years, 60 years, depending, however long. And during your time here, you're expected to try things, make mistakes, learn, expand your consciousness, grow spiritually. And then, according to Bigelow's explanation and many other religions, there is a period of decline and death, and then there's a period of reflection and review, wherein the lessons you learned in this life are fully understood and appreciated and integrated into the larger consciousness. And then you go on to make a decision about whether you come back and have another human experience, or you go on to have a different experience and become a turtle or a drop of rain or a pack of bubble tape, 6 feet of bubble gum for you, not them. You could be anything. That's what's so fun about this. Consciousness apparently is everywhere and it's everything. And physical matter is just an illusion. Let's go on and hear what Bob has to say.
For the amount of mass that we already see. But we have another problem, and that is entropy. All material objects eventually run out of control and they decay, and that is a function of entropy. And so, we don't see, if you have an open universe and you have order, there's an order in our universe, in our galaxies. They don't discombobulate like they should after it's 1 billion or 2 years. And they're lasting 10, 12, maybe 14 billion years. They shouldn't. There's a problem here. The problem is we have a huge amount of energy we can't identify. I think I know what it is. And they have words like dark energy and dark matter, okay? Which is 96% of all the friggin' energy in the universe.
But we haven't quite found it yet.
We don't know what the hell it is. But part of it, the dark energy part, prevents entropy. It provides order. So that these huge systems, these gigantic systems, like the Milky Way is like 150,000 light years, and it's elliptical in length and about 75,000 light years in diameter. Huge. Each light year is 6 trillion miles, and the nearest star is 24 trillion miles away, 4 light years, so huge distances. And so that's part of the problem, that they can't get here from there kind of thinking. Right. Okay. But that's another story. So then you say, well, wait a second. We can only find 4 to 5% of the entire energy of the universe. Where did the other 96, 95%? What is it? So by studying consciousness, you start at the itty bitty electrons, which are reactionary according to human observation, according to consciousness. And then they become in a specific location upon measurement or being noticed that they're being watched. And then you magnify that into larger other kinds of systems. And like, let's take the human body. If the human body doesn't need its container, it's 100% existing in consciousness as thought. And we definitely have proof that we have a 3-dimensional system, not counting time as a 4th dimension, just say, keep it simple, 3-dimensional system, and we coexist with another dimension. That's a consciousness kind of existing dimension. That is where we go after the container dies. And the proof, the point of the whole damn essay program, was to provide proof. So we said, we want no more than 25,000 words per essay. And the winners are going to make a lot of money, providing you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You're proving to the court that this is real. And so you better use everything you can think of to prove that it's real.
Okay, so before we go on here, what he's talking about is a let me find my link here and I'll share it with you. BigelowInstitute.com .org. MoveOn.org. Here it is, BigelowInstitute.org. It's in the chat. And if you click on, when you load that, it's going to take you to the homepage and you'll see table of contents. And from there, you can click on BICS Essay Contest, BICS, Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies. And they have the essay contest laid out. This is what he's talking about. So he had this competition that he hosted called the BICS Essay Contest. And the point of it was to argue convincingly, beyond the shadow of a doubt, using as much evidence as you can for the existence of life after death or the continuation of consciousness after physical death. It says, the winners were chosen based on the power of the arguments presented and on how persuasively the essays made the case for the survival of human consciousness beyond a reasonable doubt. The contest was judged by 7 independent judges. There was no influence from Robert Bigelow or BICS staff on the judging process. The essays were chosen by majority rule, with the central criterion being the cumulative evidence beyond a reasonable doubt for survival of human consciousness after permanent bodily death. And the judges for this, Diane Archangel, Christopher Green, Leslie Keene, Jeffrey Kripal, Hal Puthoff, Jessica Utz, and Brian Weiss, are the judging panel. There we go. Leslie Keene also has written extensively on consciousness studies and life after death. Christopher Kit Green, Hal Puthoff. So heavy hitters in the UFO world, also in the consciousness studies world. And from here, they get into the top 3 contest winners. And the winner is actually of this was Jeffrey Mishlove. He won a $500,000 prize for his essay, Beyond the Brain, the Survival of Human Consciousness After Permanent Bodily Death. And then Pim Van Lommel and Leo Rookby, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, also submitted. These are the top 3 finalists. But the Bigelow Institute has these posted, and you can download them. And then what's cool is you can actually feed them into your AI. And if you're raw clotting, this will get permanently stored as a document in your folder stack, and then you can come back to this research later. But he goes into some detail arguing for the existence of life after death. Jeffrey Mishlove is the only person with a PhD in paranormal studies. And his whole premise is basically that the argument that for physicalism and materialism is based on this assumption that the universe is made up of material, and that assumption is just an assumption. There's no proof of material, really. And he's saying that if you replace that assumption, that core assumption, with a consciousness model, then suddenly all of the other things that seem so mysterious to us make perfect sense, and they snap into focus. Everything from ghost activity to psychic phenomena to UFOs and close encounters, NDEs, near-death experiences. And this explains why a lot of times people who are near death will see what they describe as grays. Sometimes they'll see other types of beings, but there's a lot of overlap. in those worlds. So you can go to the BigelowInstitute.org website. And if you go to their homepage, if you just load the Bix website, you'll see there all of the 11 essays for the runners-up, the 15 essay honorable mentions, the top 3. You can download all of these, and then they've bound them all into a 5-volume print edition, which is this big, giant stack of stuff that he's got on his desk in the sit-down with George Knapp. So this story gets even more weird, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because I don't want to get stuck on this forever. Bear with me. Okay. So we'll pick up with some more consciousness stuff here. Take a listen to this clip.
Sort of a buzzword in UFO circles. I hear
The other 4% of the energy. Oh, I think it represents dark energy and dark matter.
That's back.
So then you grow in spirituality that is tremendous. And your knowledge and your ability is huge, is tremendous as well. So what does this start to accumulate? I think what you have is a super collective consciousness, a super collective consciousness that's unbelievably powerful, is a creator consciousness. So at the very least, it's the source of unifying control. I think it represents dark energy and dark matter. And I think it maintains control of the other 4% of the energy.
So if I'm understanding him correctly, and I don't know that I am, but I feel like I'm pretty close here. What he's trying to say is that when we look out into the universe and we see stars and planets and galaxies, and we account for all of the different physical matter that is out there, it doesn't add up correctly. We're only seeing about 4% of what we would expect to see, and they're calling the rest of it dark energy or dark matter. They don't have a real solid idea of what this is, but there's something else there that is fundamental to what's going on. And according to Bigelow's understanding and his takeaway is that the unseen force is consciousness. It's the pure resonant field of thought that when you look out and see physical matter in the universe, we're seeing the tips of icebergs poking out of an ocean of consciousness. So we can't see the ocean. We can only see the tips of the icebergs. So we're looking out and we're going, well, where's all the stuff? Where's everything else? It's actually the stuff that you can't see. That's where the action is. That's what's going on. It's invisible. It literally is invisible to us until your physical body experiences the death process and your senses are shut off. And when they're shut off completely, your consciousness is now suspended in this field of energy, and your consciousness continues to exist and cohere. You are still you, right? The I-ness, when you think of who you are, you think I, me, that I-ness is still there, right? You might not have a full grasp on where you're at or what's going on, but there's still a you there, and you don't just disappear into nothingness. And then you begin the process of navigating this new world without a physical body, using your new sensory system that you haven't used for your whole human life, but you are familiar with because it existed before you were born. I am personally very partial to this concept. And in my own personal experience, I have had my own personal experiences that have reinforced this to such a degree that for me personally, this is it. This is it. This is what's going on. I had the trifecta. I had it all. I had the experience of a lifetime that showed me in a very, very powerful, life-altering, personal way that fit exactly what I needed at the time. That this is all true. And without getting into the whole story, which I've told a number of times on this channel, I had an opportunity to do an ayahuasca ceremony many years ago when I was in a really weird, difficult time in my life. And it was a very long, I took it extremely seriously, and I did all the prep, and I did all of the purification that you're supposed to do. And I really took it seriously. And when I had this experience, I was shown, I experienced that process. I experienced the process of shutting down all of your senses and being taken outside of the body and shown what it's, I call it the waiting room. I don't think I got the full tour. I think I got the 5-minute version. I think I got like the lobby tour is how I kind of describe it. There was a female personality. There was a female that guided me on this process. She spoke to me. I heard words. I actually heard her voice like you would talk to another person in the room. I heard it in my ears, and I heard it in my mind. That blew me away. And I had the experience of my consciousness traveling from place to place, meeting different entities. Some of them paid attention to me. Some of them ignored me completely. I saw all of this unfold. I was in a space that felt infinite and yet contained at the same time. I was able to access information that other people had experienced. I was able to feel things that other people had experienced. For instance, I was given kind of a sample of a life review where I was shown situations that I had experienced in my life, but I experienced them from the vantage point of other people who were there. And then I got to see, oh, wow, okay. And then I was shown something that really blew my mind that at the time made no sense to me, but later, a few years later, became a real event that took place in my life. And I realized later, when it happened for real, that I had been shown the future. I had had an opportunity for my consciousness to slip outside of the boundaries of this physical kind of system. And for a brief moment, I got a glimpse behind the curtain. Brief moment was about 4 hours in my case, which could have been 4 years or 400 years for all I could tell you at the time. But then later, I had the experience of coming back, and then this thing happened. And so for me, to hear Bigelow say this makes a tremendous impact, because it means I'm not the only person who's had this experience. I'm one of many people who feel this way. And I kind of suspected that, but the longer I spend in this space and the more I talk to folks like you guys, the more clear it becomes that this is the truth that's kind of foundational to the whole thing. And he doesn't go there in this interview, but I think he's teeing up to in another episode of this podcast, basically saying that the others, the visitors, or at least some of the visitors, are from this realm, and they use some kind of what we would call machinery or hardware to visit this level of reality, that they're able to basically downshift into our vibrational frame and then upshift back into their world. And this kind of tracks with this idea of what the grays might be, some type of a biological android that may exist to function as a sort of avatar for a spiritual being, a consciousness that doesn't have a body, to inhabit a body temporarily for the purpose of exploring. Like we would teleoperate a drone that's at the bottom of the ocean. We couldn't go there, but we would send a robot down, and we could maybe see things that we wouldn't normally be able to see. So that's kind of the idea here. Mr. Justin, David Grush tells Dr. Phil that UFO crash retrieval program's personnel showed him photos and videos of retrieved craft and cadavers of multiple types of non-human pilots. Ooh, that's interesting. We'll have to talk about that on Friday. Total ego death. Jesse Nez, 27. Total ego death, huh? Yeah, it was pretty much it was the full ride. I'm not telling you that you should go do ayahuasca. I won't tell anybody that that's what they should do. It's what I did because at the time I was in a very like weird place in my life and I was looking for answers, and it was something that was on my radar. And when I had the opportunity to do it, and I did, it was everything I needed it to be. And a central premise of this whole kind of idea that consciousness is the fundamental baseline reality of everything has a lot to do with this idea that your life, each of us individually, as we experience our life, going through it day by day, moment to moment, beat by beat, that life experience is like a custom made movie. It is like a film or a play that you are participating in, that you have chosen to participate in and then been memory wiped. And now you are on this stage and you're performing the role of a character, which is your normal personality in life. And you're going into this world and you're basically spending 80 or whatever years doing the going through the motions of being a human and living under constraints of like limited time, limited energy, limited health, limited freedom, and you have to struggle against all of these limitations in order to grow and mature and become a stronger, smarter, more aware, spiritually well-rounded version of who you're meant to be. And it's the struggle that produces that growth. Without the struggle, you would just atrophy. And this idea really resonates. And I think that these experiences that people have, these transformative experiences, which I've had, the one I just described to you, I had many others, but that was the most significant. I think each of us is given opportunities to have these experiences. And when you're in one, it feels almost very liminal, but synchronicity is a great word to describe it in a sense. It's one way that this manifests, synchronicities, when your consciousness is in a flow state and things just sort of fall into place and you're resonating with other nodes and you're attracting these consciousnesses to you. There's an unseen network of connections happening underneath the surface that's taking place, and your intention, the energy you bring to it, is what activates those connections. Certain ones get activated if you have a certain type of intention, and others get activated otherwise. And it's the energy that you cultivate within yourself and the thought vibrations that you cultivate within yourself that does take a little effort. And that's the thing. That is, I think, the trick of it. You have to apply a little bit of effort to it to get the boat underway. But once it's in motion, it's under the inertia of itself. And that process is the key to the whole thing. And each person is given opportunities in your own life experience, in the script or the film of your own life, which is unique to you. It's like a fingerprint. It has all of your own unique individual personal challenges that you've got to overcome. There will be moments where you will have these sort of uncanny encounters or strange things. And these are events that are literally manifesting as an opportunity for you to learn in some form or fashion. Or sometimes they're manifesting as a signal to you that something really weird is happening, and that it's like a clue, like in the Matrix when they see the cat and he's like, oh, that's a deja vu kind of a thing. So I've had this happen a lot with animals. I've had this happen a number of times with birds, particularly owls. I will be walking down the street with my dog, and I'll be standing on a corner, and I'll turn my head to the left and I'll look over, and there'll be like a picket fence or something. And right there, 3 feet from my face, is an owl. A beautiful barn owl will be sitting there looking me right in the eyes. And it's the weirdest fucking thing that's ever happened. And it won't fly away. It won't go anywhere. I can stand there and look at it for 2 minutes and it will look at me and we'll just have this weird moment. I've had stuff like that happen dozens of times. And every time it happens, I get this crazy feeling. I'm like, I meant to see this. This is a clue. I feel like I'm in a video game and someone is outside the game and they're like, let's see if he gets it. Let's show him cue the owl. Cue the owl. We're going to see if he gets it. Let's see if he gets it. Cue the owl. Owl flies in, lands. And I look at it and I'm like, that's really weird. And it looks back at me, doesn't do anything. This is just, could it be just a totally random animal experience? Sure. And am I probably reading too much into it? Maybe. But I think that's the whole point, is that it's seamless. It's a part. These events are at the same time extraordinary and totally ordinary. And that's the magic. It's almost like internally, it's the choice you make to how you interpret those events that informs whether or not they become a learning experience or just an experience. And it's just so elegant. It's such an elegant way to explain all of the things that make so little sense otherwise. They just kind of snap together. And I love this whole line of thinking. And that, again, is one of the reasons Bigelow is such an amazing figure in this space, because it's not just the mustache or the amazing hair or the cool fucking aerospace company that he has that we haven't even talked about yet, or the fact that he's into afterlife and UFOs and all that stuff. Those things are all amazing. But it's that this one guy is interested in all of these things. He's an engineer, he's a designer, he's a entrepreneur, he is a dreamer, he's a visionary. He's all the things that we talk about. Somebody like Elon Musk, they throw all these platitudes at Elon. You look at like what Bigelow is doing. This is some amazing Renaissance level research that he's doing. And he's asking really huge questions above and beyond how do we get to Mars? Like, this is the next level beyond that by an order of magnitude. And he's not just asking the questions, he's funding the research and he's putting in the resources and he's hiring the personnel and bringing on the experts to make these cases. Somebody in the chat asked me a little while ago. Here, D-Nits. I highly recommend looking up It from Bit theory. It explains dark matter, ether, consciousness, and a lot more. Thanks for the super chat, D. And thanks for the super hat, which I have. As soon as it's not 150 degrees outside, I'll be wearing it. Little Sparrow Tarot says, Little Sparrow Tarot says, I bet the astral realm is like the upside down in Stranger Things and secret programs know it well. Okay, yes, I think that is part of it. There is a book. I don't have it in this room, but it's on one of my tables in the other room. It's called The Road to Immortality by Geraldine Cummins. Geraldine Cummins was a Irish woman who was the stenographer, if you will, for a channeled consciousness that came through and attempted to explain over a period of different sessions how the afterlife actually functions as a system. Okay, this book is called The Road to Immortality by Geraldine Cummins. Look it up. It's not a long read. You could read it in one sitting. You could probably read the whole book in an hour. It's about, I'd say, maybe 110 pages. I mean, it's not. It's a thin book. I might get up and go grab my copy if I can. And this book is one that Jeffrey Mishlove refers to actually in his essay about the afterlife, and he talks about it in his interview, I believe, with Bigelow. It's where I got the reference to actually look into it. And in this book, it describes all the different layers and levels of reality that exist after the death process that you will experience as you go. And it is it's so organized, and it is just laid out by level. And it's like you after the physical experience the death process, and then there's a period of rest where the consciousness is allowed to sort of just chill. And then the consciousness is allowed to go to another layer of reality, which is called, they in the book call it Summerland. Or Summerland is the realm of illusion. And in Summerland, it is described like a mirror image of real life. Imagine a world just as real as this one, but in that world, you don't have any of the pressures of this life. You can do anything you want. You can go anywhere you want. You don't have to, you'll never get hungry. You'll never starve. You'll never get sick. You won't die. You'll just be able to like have experiences and more or less replay a lot of things that you've done in this life. And it is intended, this realm, Summerland, they call it, it is intended as an opportunity or as a place for consciousness to stay in a familiar zone. Right after experiencing the physical world, you go to this next world, and it's like the airlock between here and the really weird stuff. Okay, so you spend some time in this zone, and they describe how in that period you might be able to experience all manner of different things, but you're going to experience them as if you were in a physical body. It's going to feel to you very much like this world feels, but you'll have a lot more freedom. Okay. And then there's another layer beyond that, and that layer starts to get progressively weirder. And then from there, you get up and up and up into the different levels of consciousness until you reach reunification with the global, total, unified field. And that's the ultimate goal, is to merge back with the source. And this book, I can't recommend it enough, The Road to Immortality by Geraldine Cummins. There's another book that I really, really like, and it changed my life. And I highly recommend this series of books. And it is called Seth Speaks by Jane and Robert Butts. I know the name is kind of funny. My 5-year-old son thinks it's hilarious, but they were also, Jane was a channeler and channeled this being, this consciousness known as Seth, over a period of years, many dozens of times. And over time, she developed a huge following of people that would come to attend her channeling sessions. And each one was recorded and transcribed by hand into a series of books. The first book was called Seth Speaks. And in that book, Seth, this non-physical consciousness, communicates through it. It basically plugs into Jane's mind and uses her aptitude for language to translate its pure thought into her words so that we can understand them. And this entity, Seth, explains that basically what Bigelow's talking about. You create your own reality. It's all a part of a system that's operating behind the scenes that we are blind to while we're here. But as soon as you die, and Seth starts the book by saying, like, I am a being who has died more times than I care to count. And it's way more boring than you think it is. It's not as exciting. It's like being born is a way bigger shock than dying. And it's kind of an interesting intro to the book. You're in like 10 pages in, and it's explaining to you how being born is way more difficult than coming into this world, because you're coming from a place where all of these limitations are taken off of you, and you're coming into a world where you're being compressed into a physical body and subject to the human condition, which is a totally limiting experience for a young human. And so in this book, Seth Speaks, he goes on to explain the basic fundamental mechanics of how it works. Consciousness is non-physical. You have a body while you're here, which is sort of a manifestation of your consciousness. Your consciousness causes physical matter to cohere around itself and create a physical body, which is, it houses it for a period of time. and you can go on and have your experience of being alive. And then when your body dies, your consciousness is exactly where it was before. And this is a key thing that Seth explains. You're in this field right now as you sit here watching me, and as I sit here talking to my camera in my office. Your consciousness is in the same soup that it will be the moment after your physical body stops breathing. And that physical soup is your, you can access it now through meditation and through deep meditation practices and a discipline, consciousness. So those two books, Seth Speaks and The Road to Immortality, are outstanding, and I highly recommend them. Christopher Cobb, yeah, scary if NHI can manipulate where our consciousness goes. I wonder if you guys are talking about the soul trap idea, this whole soul trap. Cosmic Serpent says Hal Puthoff was apparently the owl in the disinformation group, The Aviary. Check it out. John Alexander was Penguin. Doty was Sparrow. I'll post a link in Discord. Not sure if this has been proven. By the way, guys, if you're not on our Discord, you should be. Go there. You can go to teamnightshift.com. You can click the link for Discord. It'll take you to the page where you can join our Discord server and participate in the expanded conversations. Little Sparrow Tarot, I think you can affect the physical by manipulating the astral, which is the basis for magic, and it worries me if nefarious forces have this info and use it on us. Where's my other book that I wanted to share with you? Yeah, the whole astral plane thing is really interesting. I have a feeling that somehow is going to be a big part of this, and that the real issue here is the language that we use to describe these things is so like siloed off that there's no common vocabulary that ties it all together under one central theme. And so when we talk about the astral plane and magic, people immediately disengage from the idea of science and physics and UFOs and physical craft. They seem like they're completely separate things. But what if they were all one thing? And what if the super spectrum, as John Keel describes it, is more or less just a total reality that includes the astral realm and the physical realm and all of the layers of each in between. And the truth is that if your soul doesn't really die, then that is the real thing that we're all inside of. We're inside of a giant astral plane existence. And the physical world is just an experience within that consciousness field. And if that's the case, and beings can come from upper levels down into our level, then it stands to reason that there is probably a way that we could go from this level up, or that technology could allow us to go back and forth. And if that were the ground truth at the bottom of this whole thing, that I could see as being a tough to digest reality. And I don't know how you explain that to people. One of the things that's interesting about Bigelow's new podcast here with George Knapp is that it seems like he's attempting to try and explain all this stuff with this podcast and answer these questions for people. Law of One, Raw Material, holy Shazam. Yeah, Law of One, Raw Material is another great book. Same idea. A channeler, a group of channelers channeling this entity called Ra. What's cool about the Raw Material is that in that book, they ask questions like you would ask. They ask the questions you would ask, right? If you were, so they've got a volunteer who is the channeling, the channel, and this person is lying on a bed or a couch or a platform, and they have some objects placed around them that are apparently there to help sort of tune the environment to make the channeling happen a little bit more easily. And then this person goes into a trance-like state, and the non-physical being, Ra, or social memory complex is what it calls itself, begins to communicate information through this medium, right? This channeler. And if it works the way that I'm pretty sure it works, my experience, I experienced telepathic downloads. I experienced a nonverbal communication that was entirely mental. And it comes in the form of a thought form, like a wave of thought. Imagine a data download. Imagine I could send you a file with my mind, and if you double click that file, it opens up into a complete volume of information that expands into you would have access to the emotions attached to that. You would have access to the memories attached to it. You'd have access to the sights and sounds and smells and sensations that are all tied to this concept, all in one little thought bubble that you could fire at someone and they could catch it and get this complete understanding, right? So in the law of one, raw material, they have a channeler, and she's in this space, she's receiving this information, and then her job, the mind, she's providing the physical body and the mind loaded with language that can translate these thought forms into words, and then that gets written down. If you are in a non-physical state, or if you're in an altered consciousness state, similar to what one would experience on DMT or ayahuasca, which is a form of DMT, then you would get these, if you receive these same thought forms, you would get these deep, expansive downloads of very resonant, rich information that you would feel like you had a complete understanding, a total command of everything that was being sent to you, almost as if it was coming from your own personal experience. Like it's that seamless. But when you have to translate it into English, you lose about 80% of that. It's just not possible to explain what's coming through. It's just the language doesn't exist for it. And so the channeler's job is to somehow bridge that gap. And in this series of channeling sessions, the law of one, the raw material, the research group that is doing these sessions is asking Ra specific questions, like really specific, like, are there aliens as we would think of them? Where are they? Are they here? Are they on another planet? Are they in orbit? Are they in the ocean? Like, where? What kind are they? And Ra gives the answers in a very specific way. Just comes back and goes, yes, there are other physical beings. They do come to your planet and craft. They visit in all sorts of different ways, but more or less they're from different places, but they inhabit the same physical plane of existence that you do. But there's also a non-physical plane, and there are things up there that can also come down and do. And you're seeing all of this stuff happen. So when you're looking at little gray beings and flying saucers, that's one facet of this, but it's also just a facet. And there are many other things going on. And they will ask Ra other very specific questions about different things that are historical events or future events. And Ra gives these very specific answers. So if you're looking for a really interesting deep dive into channeling and what some of this information transfer is trying to communicate, if you step back from it, what I try to do is take a big step back and look at it from the wide view. And it's if you don't put too much, if you don't get lost in the weeds and you just step back and look at it very simply, what it appears to be is that there is one master total super spectrum existence. We don't die. We just keep cycling through it. And there are beings on the other side that are desperately trying to communicate back to us all kinds of information. And some people, mediums and channelers, are able to serve as intermediaries for that information. And if you know where to look and you know who to read and what to look at, you can get some very, very deep and powerful insights into how the mechanics of this total system actually works. But the physical material world, as we understand it, is only the tip of a iceberg poking out of an ocean of consciousness, and underneath is where the real action is. But thanks for that reference. Holy Shazam. Law of One Raw Material is a great one. Yeah, downloads are telepathy. 100%. Wrath of Kant even says, Clint, in the Book of Spirits, the channeler asks questions as well. Very aligned with Ra. The book was written in the 1800s. Great source for answers as well. Ooh, that's cool. The Book of Spirits. I have to read this. This is a new one. Book of... Thanks for that heads up. Alan Kardec? Is that the one I'm thinking of? Alan Kardec? Is that correct? Oh, okay. It looks like it's on the Internet Archive. There's an audio library of this. I'm going to put it in the chat. Tell me if this is the right one. Yeah, I think that's the one. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to Bigelow. Let me find my next clip here, and I'll share it with you. Hang on one second. Bigelow. Here we go.
Have the ability to function to produce anomalous results that our normal five senses shouldn't be able to produce. And you're not using those, you're using a sixth kind of sense, you know. So back to the universal situation, if you have a universe that never had a beginning and never had an end, and you still have a mystery of things moving away, which is fine until the Hubble became antiquated, because it can only see out about 13.5 billion light years. Well, the Webb telescope goes 33 billion, 34 billion light years, and then it becomes very difficult for the theory. And remember, Big Bang is just a theory. It's not fact. It has nothing to do with fact. I'll tell you maybe about a conversation I had with Michio Kaku for about an hour on the God equation book.
Let me skip this part because we already did this. Sorry, guys. We were skipped ahead a little bit further. Here we go. So he talks about at Skinwalker Ranch, the whole thing with Skinwalker Ranch, what the whole point of this was. And a lot of this anomalous activity that was happening at the ranch is closely related to the things that he's talking about, or more or less the same thing that he's talking about. So that was why AAWSAP was so focused on studying it. And he's going to tell a little bit of a story here about how that actually shook out for Lacatski. And this is actually really interesting.
Tour.
Yeah.
And he had an experience right off the bat. And looking back,
whole area. And we were getting information, not just on the ranch. No, we had so much stuff. We could cover a lot of area.
Dr. Lacatski comes to Las Vegas. You jump on your plane, you fly to northeastern Utah, and you took him on a little tour.
Yeah.
And he had an experience right off the bat. And looking back, does it seem like to you that it was designed for him to make an impression?
Well, yeah, because of what happened once we got there. Within 45 minutes of actually arriving on the property, there was a custom exhibition for him. But before that, we're in my plane, and he's looking out the window, and we're coming close, to Vernal, where the airport is, and we still have to get in a car and drive about 30 minutes to the ranch. But he's looking down, and he said, "Oh, well, there's the ranch." So he had aerial photographs to where he knew it visually.
Hmm.
Yeah, because he spotted the mesa and the topography and everything, and so we could see it. We're that low because we're on approach. And he said, "Oh, there's the ranch." I said, "Yeah, by golly, yep, you're right. That's it." And so I was going to mention something else too. I'll save it for later. So we get in our car and we drive there. We get to the ranch. We go through the gates and everything, and our security guards are all around, and so we go into the new homestead. It's still an old building, but the new homestead, and where Gene Dietz and Richard live. They're the managers, and she was a spunky gal.
Yes.
And a lot of stuff happened all the time in her house because
Yes.
that's where Sherman lived. Terry Sherman lived, and his wife lived there too, and their 2 kids. And why there were peculiar locks on the doors and things, right? So we're sitting actually, and the story is this: we were in the dining area of the living room. We weren't in the kitchen. We were in the dining area of the living room around a rectangular table. And there were 4 of us. And Jim was the only one looking into the kitchen. The rest of us weren't. We weren't facing in the kitchen at all. And we had been on the ranch about 45 minutes altogether when we had started that meeting. So what Jim was exposed to and saw happened as it was, though it was customized for him, and which it obviously was. He was the only one that saw it. And what he saw floating above the floor, about sink countertop high, was a metal-looking object that was tubular, like in the music album Tubular Bells.
Right. Mike
Okay.
Oldfield. Yeah.
Yeah, and
The
that's
Exorcist.
what it looked like. And Lacatski was very slow in talking to me about anything, but on the flight back, and he said, he said, "Did you see anything?" I said, "No."
So he doesn't say anything at the ranch. It's not until you're on your way back.
Yeah, we're on our way back, and he's saying, "Did you see anything?" And I said, "Well, no. Where? When?" He said, "When we were in the house, when we were having our meeting." I said, "No." So over a period of time, he loosened up more and more and more, and finally divulged everything about what he saw, and described it in detail as much as he could. And it was there for a significant, it wasn't like 2 or 3 seconds. It was there for a significant period of time. A lot of times you see something that comes and goes very fast, and or you see evidence that can linger for a very long time if you don't disturb it, if you don't change what has been changed, that could be there for weeks or months, right? So it depends on what the demonstration, the nature of the demonstration is. Or something dissolves, and well, then that's going to be a matter of seconds or minutes or whatever. So this had been there, so it really sunk into him, and it was customized. And so he was off and running he was an experiencer right off the bat as a government employee, in addition to all the other people, all the other government people that showed up. And so Jim was the first one.
It's amazing. I mean, looking back at it, it seemed like it did whatever is there, designed it for him to make an impression. And then he goes back to DC, he designs the outline of a program, he tells it to you, you call Reid, and then AAWSAP is born.
AAWSAP was born.
Okay, so this is really interesting. Lacatski is the DIA analyst and scientist who Bigelow hired to launch AAWSAP. And he had an experience at Skinwalker Ranch where he witnessed in the kitchen of this house that they were in a metallic cylindrical object hovering about 3 feet off the ground in the kitchen for a period of minutes, it sounds like they're describing. And that experience so affected him that he was convinced to go ahead and launch this program, which would later go on to find all of these other connections between consciousness and the UFO UAP enigma, which in and of itself is amazing, but also dovetails really nicely with what we were talking about earlier, is that these types of transformative experiences seem to be tailor-made for the individual. And the experience that you have and the experience that I have and the experience that someone else might have can be completely different. And they might not involve any kind of UFO or ghost, as you might describe it, experience, but they may just be weird, anomalous experiences that are designed to create a certain reaction in you that makes you zig instead of zag, or choose one path instead of another, or make a decision that you wouldn't normally make. But in other words, to guide you, almost as if there are other unseen consciousnesses just outside of our realm of experience that are able to act on information that we don't have access to, but they know when we're going to be someplace. Time doesn't really exist on that plane. It's an illusion that we experience. So for them, a whole human lifetime might look like a topographical map instead of a linear line, right? Like it might just be, you could with a thought just go to a point in their life and appear there, and then connect to another point and appear there. And for that person to experience those events, they might be 10 or 20 years apart, but to the consciousness on the other side trying to interact, like in Interstellar, it could be like one of those types of things where they're only able to send certain things through at certain times, or maybe create an experience that lasts a few brief moments that's just enough to get you thinking, but not enough to communicate directly. I think most of us have had something on this order of weirdness happen to us. Show of hands in the chat if anybody has had any experience that makes anything like this, that sounds familiar to anything that we're talking about. I'm just curious if anyone in the chat, let me know. DNITS, why don't you have air conditioning in the UK? I still don't understand that. I mean, it's not, I understand that you don't have them, like it's not a feature of all of a lot of these older buildings. Like Xander was telling me about this too. Everybody I know in the UK, they all say the same thing. There's no air conditioning. But we still make air conditioners, and they're sold in stores, right? And you can go there and buy one, and they're the size of a microwave. It's not that. Is it not available in the UK? I'm just curious. Beth Noyes says, that's why I'm annoyed with this Bigelow. Something bad is going to happen. You will probably be wiped out, but we're trying to find a way to survive type thing. Reminded me of the spaceship game. Yeah, so she's talking about the interview he did with Jeffrey Mishlove. And in that interview, he talks about another research project that Bigelow funded, where he hired a team of remote viewers, and he, as he calls them, gold star remote viewers. And there are some really amazing top tier remote viewers. That's who he's working with. And he says, he describes that project as they were looking out into the near future to try and understand something about an unrelated thing they were working on. They wanted to see if there was a piece of medical technology that was going to be viable at a certain time. And they were trying to like look out a few years ahead to sort of understand something else. And they ran into this issue where they weren't able to see beyond a certain boundary. All these remote viewers ran into some kind of, I don't want to call it a wall, but kind of like that. It was some kind of a boundary. And according to Bigelow, that disturbed these guys, and they basically were able to conclude that there is some type of an event that is so huge that it's impossible for them to see past this event. The bigness of the event is so unbelievable that it just kind of, you can see up to a certain point, and then it's like you hit a wall. And through some further research, which he talks about in that interview, he goes on to explain that this event apparently doesn't end well for humanity. As they understand it, it's a negative event with some very negative consequences, and it is somewhere out there lurking in the future, as if like an iceberg that we were going to crash into at some point. And that's really weird. He got really awkward in that interview, and it was just kind of a heavy conversation. Did he say there was going to be a cataclysm? Yes. In that interview, he alludes to there being some type of a cataclysm. He goes there. Okay. Now, let's skip ahead a little bit. This is going to take us to a different flavor of this conversation. He's going to start talking about the AAWSAP relationship with some other aerospace companies, and specifically some UFO related hardware that they were trying to get their hands on. And to give you an explanation of what this is all about, I'm going to cut to a clip from Jesse Michaels' interview with Dylan Borland, where he'll set this up a little better than I could. And let me see if I can just cue this up at the right time. Here we go. So this is an interview on Jesse Michaels' American Alchemy with Dylan Borland, friend of the show, who is going to be telling us a little bit about what was going on with Bigelow. And then I'm going to jump back to Bigelow, where he'll explain in more detail sort of the second half of all this stuff. So take a listen to what Dylan and Jesse have to say here.
Directed energy.
Yep.
And you have all these things, and all of these things are really hard to attribute in a terrestrial context. You know, only up until the last couple of years has the intelligence community, people from the CIA and NSA, started to say that Russia and microwave weaponry is responsible for this Havana syndrome and vestibular destabilization that a lot of, diplomats have experienced all over the world.
That's my safe word, vestibular destabilization.
You have a really interesting book called The
What's your
Controllers
safe
by
word,
a guy
Pat?
named Martin Cannon.
I'll check that out.
He talks about how MK Ultra was used, or the alien abduction thing was used as a smokescreen for MK Ultra.
I believe that.
And so I'm sure that, and that doesn't make the abduction thing
Absolutely.
not true. In fact, it makes
100%.
it more likely that there is an underlying reality to that. And that's why it's a good smokescreen in certain contexts. And then you have anti-gravity, propulsion, people like Thomas Townsend Brown, who I'm as high conviction in anything when it comes to this story. And it seems like that's how the crafts fly. So it's an extremely convoluted and complicated landscape where you never know what you're looking at.
Yeah, I think, let's have the fun. We talked about the car scenario. The first conversation I had with you was about this. You and I went over this. I was like, Jesse, I think it's everything and stuff we still don't understand or know. Like, all of this can be true, and I believe it all is true. And the problem is that my opinion is the reason they're keeping this a secret is it because so criminal, so messed up, so much money.
Yeah.
It is embarrassing. And then this goes back to legalities, right? Back to ODNI and what they did to us. Those are felonies. But by law, you have executive orders. I wish I could name it off the top of my head right now, but I had to do security. Everybody in the intelligence community has to do training every year on the classified system. And the law literally is, you cannot classify information for embarrassment, criminal activity, and financials. They're doing it. It's happening. So I brought this up. George Knapp, under oath in front of Congress, which can be used as evidence with the Securities Exchange Commission, literally said Lockheed Martin had a craft, they were going to sell it to Bigelow, and Glenn Gaffney with the CIA stepped in.
I have confirmed on the record that Robert Bigelow and a trusted colleague from AAWSAP met with and negotiated with senior executives at Lockheed Martin and hammered out a deal wherein Bigelow's company, Bass, would receive a quantity of unusual material that had been stashed away and protected at a facility in California. That material was not made here.
Are any of you willing to name specific gatekeepers within the root cell of the UAP-SAP Federation?
I have a name for you.
Go ahead.
Glenn Gaffney. CIA.
Glenn Gaffney. We were in the room that day. There's Dan. You can see Dan right there. Hey, Dan. There's Dan. There's Matt Brown. There's Jeremy. Let's see. Who else is back here? Xander and I are sitting right back here. You can't see us. We're kind of back at literally the last two chairs by the door in the back. But this was a crazy day.
Daphne CIA.
Where are the attorneys to sue Lockheed Martin with the Securities Exchange Commission?
Yes, that's exactly right. Great question, Dylan. I love it. That's so awesome. Yes. Sue these motherfuckers. This is going to be lawyers having a bloodbath. That's what this is going to be. I'm going to watch the whole thing burn down.
I don't know.
Okay, so now here we go. Even if the attorneys go and sue and you want to say it's a classified law, well, guess what? You just admitted they had a craft.
Right.
So where is it?
Right.
Where is everybody in this? You wanted whistleblowers. We came out. We stuck our necks out. We threw caution to the wind in service for God, family, country. And here we are. Dave's hands are tied behind his back up in Congress. Burleson and Luna and Moskowitz, everybody's trying to do this. Where is everybody?
Well, that's what strikes me most about this whole topic is it almost feels like there's like a paranormal or parapsychological control mechanism around not letting this stuff out. Because if you think about it, if the claim is that, the U.S. government has a multi-generational crash retrieval program, we have saucers, or if not saucers, parts of saucers and other, geometries, triangles or whatever in hangars,
Pull.
bodies, all these things, right? Then the interesting question to me is like, how come very few smoking guns end up rising to the top in the age of social media and smartphones in the open source context? And there are easy answers to that where it's like, okay, only a few crashes have happened. It really seems like it's this directed energy plus nuclear thing. And so it's all kind of, concentrated in certain areas. But I think there are crashes outside of that as well. And
Agreed.
like, so you get into this weird thing where it's like, is the non-human intelligence in control of the cover-up too?
My opinion?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Have you ever talked to anybody in a credible position in the government who seems to have hinted that humans aren't in charge?
The ICIG did it.
What
with
did
me
they say?
personally. I want to respect them. But
Okay.
the ICIG did it with me.
So
Yes.
the Intelligence Community Inspector General told you that humans are not in charge.
They extremely hinted at it, yes.
Holy shit. That is crazy.
Oh, I love the way Jesse reacts to this. This is like awesome. It's so awesome. This is what I'm saying, guys. Like, this is what makes it so fun. You got to have fun with this stuff. You really do. It is earth shattering. It's heavy. It's astonishing. And it's so mind-blowing that at a certain point you just have to take a big step back and kind of just chuckle and watch it all. It's amazing. And I don't know why there aren't more people in this space talking about it. Like, it just seems like the UFO community is huge now, but it should be 10 times bigger than it is, because this is the most interesting conversation you can have about anything. And the fact that all this shit ties together is insane. It's insane. And unlike any other conspiracy theory that people get into, or, I don't know if the flat earth thing appealed to you at any one time or not, like that, this is unlike all of those other things, because this field is literally packed with extraordinarily talented PhDs, intellectuals, top of their field experts across all different disciplines. And just to watch this whole thing play out in real time, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're in it. I'm so glad that we're watching it happen together, because this shit is crazy. And I love the reaction that Jesse just had, because it's like, I do that once a day. I feel like I have to take a step back and kind of catch my breath. It is unbelievable. Let's take a look at your chat messages. Obama said on Kimmel, they won't let us, like it's a joke, but POTUS jokes probably have a hint of truth. Yeah, they won't let us. And I wonder how much of that is like a deal that they made. You know, Mr. Justin says, Dylan's just direct response to that. I am so interested in what more Dylan knows. Hopefully Dylan will call into the show on Friday if we're really lucky. I know he watches, and every once in a while we get lucky and Dylan will drop in and hang with us for like half an hour. And if we're really lucky tomorrow, he might. So if we all send out positive vibes to Dylan, if you have got a line in to Dylan, send him a text and let him know to join us on Doomer Friday tomorrow. He hangs out in the chat. Please hit the like button. Thanks, Mel, for that. I appreciate that. Okay, so I want to move on to the next thing here. Bear with me while I get my ducks in a row. Paul Panda, he was undercover last week. Yeah, he was undercover last week. Okay, so here we go. This is the one. Here we go.
This country, and I love national defense. I don't want to put anybody in danger. Pax River strategically, for a defense perspective, if you have a Golden Dome, hypothetically, that's a really important place to have. That's pretty far east. You have access all along the East Coast. So you throw something on Pax, you throw something in South Florida, you throw something up in Maine, you can defend the East Coast. But yeah. Yeah, hypothetically.
Hypothetically. And then you also have Salvatore Pais with his Navy patents from 2018 coming out of Pax River. And basically everything that you would need to build a UFO, from room temperature superconductivity to, mass reducing device, this thing that breaks the Schwinger limit. But yeah, he has all these patents that basically like how you would build a UFO.
Well, what you gotta love about Pais, and you and I talked about him and other things last night too. I love the fact that we're getting into this right now. But if you go into Google patents, they reference older patents to justify their current ones. And what's interesting is if you get into some triangle patents and some other things, you start to track down power sources and gravity control. You end up back in the 50s with the Air Force and NASA, and they're referencing things that are like, So, like,
all right, let me skip ahead. 228. This is where I want to get to the Bigelow thing. Here we go.
And or no, like, all of this can be true, and I believe it all is true. And the problem is that my opinion is, the reason they're keeping this a secret is because so criminal, so messed up, so much money.
Yeah.
It is embarrassing. And then this goes back to legalities, right? Back to ODNI and what they did to us. Those are felonies. But by law, you have executive orders. I wish I could name it off the top of my head right now, but I had to do security. Everybody in the intelligence community has to do training every year on the classified system. And the law literally is, you cannot classify information for embarrassment, criminal activity, and financials. They're doing it. It's happening. So I brought this up. George Knapp, under oath in front of Congress.
We got
now.
Where is everybody in this? You wanted whistleblowers. We came out. We stuck our necks out. We threw caution to the wind in service for God, family, country. And here we are. Dave's hands are tied behind his back up in Congress. Burleson and Luna and Moskowitz, everybody's trying to do this. Where is everybody?
Well, that's what strikes me most about this whole topic is it almost feels like there's like a paranormal or parapsychological control mechanism around not letting this stuff out. Because if you think about it, if the claim is that, the U.S. government has a multi-generational crash retrieval program, we have saucers, or if not saucers, parts of saucers and other, geometries, triangles or whatever in hangars,
Pull.
bodies, all these things, right? Then the interesting question to me is like, how come very few smoking guns end up rising to the top in the age of social media and smartphones in the open source context? And there are easy answers to that where it's like, okay, only a few crashes have happened. It really seems like it's this directed energy plus nuclear thing. And so it's all kind of, concentrated in certain areas. But I think there are crashes outside of that as well. And
Agreed.
like, so you get into this weird thing where it's like, is the non-human intelligence in control of the cover up too?
My opinion?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Have you ever talked to anybody in a credible position in the government who seems to have hinted that humans aren't in charge?
The ICIG did it.
What
With
did
me
they say?
personally. I want to respect them. But
Okay.
the ICIG did it with me.
So
Yes.
the Intelligence Community Inspector General told you that humans are not in charge.
They extremely hinted at it, yes.
Holy shit. That is crazy.
They hinted at it, yes.
That is insane. That's insane. And then you think of the fact that Chuck McCullough is involved in this topic and really helping out on the whistleblower side. And he was the first Intelligence Community Inspector General.
Chuck is a beast. And I think we talked about this last night. I have nothing but respect for everybody who gives a damn about our nation and who cares to serve it. God, family, country.
Dude, that is wild that the Intelligence Community Inspector General in this role is basically the judiciary for the Intelligence Committee, right?
They
Like
are, but keep in mind,
yeah.
that's the IC, not the CIA, not DOA. You gotta remember, those are separate IGs, just like the DOD IG is separate.
So what would the IC be privy to that might allow them to say with authority that humans aren't in charge of the government?
I want to be very careful and very respectful. This goes back, if you listen to the weapon. See, again, Jeremy and George and I and Matt, all of us have said things and laid groundwork for years to come because we have no idea. We could die tomorrow. So we're all trying to get this out and have a baseline and be respectful and not go crazy like I'm partying with aliens in Washington, D.C. crap. What I said in Weaponized was you can tell somebody knows something based on the questions they ask you. You respond, and the next question they ask you is very telling. So hypothetically, Jesse, let's say you ask me a question and I say, yeah, I've seen gray beings, traditional grays. If I said that to you, your next question is be like, when, where, how? Hypothetically speaking, let's say I say that and your next question is, well, where did they come from? And then I respond, well, I don't have an answer. I think they've been here a long time. And the very next statement is, well, who do you think is running the show? Hypothetically, let's say that happened.
That's wild. That is so crazy. And it's especially crazy given that, David Grush gave them all sorts of documentation from his experience on the UAP task force where he looked comprehensively
With
into
40 witnesses. Let's be clear. Dave brought 40 witnesses
who were on the program.
And Matt and I were not a part of that. Lou was not a part of that, to the best of my knowledge. Stratton, Lacatski, this whole list.
And they called his complaint urgent and credible.
Okay, so these two things do connect. So I know we're looking at two completely different interviews here, but what he's explaining here is that there is a different pipeline of whistleblowers and witnesses that he's talking about, the people that David Grush talked to, which exists as a separate pipeline from the people that Robert Bigelow is talking about. And that is significant because the second pipeline that Bigelow is talking about is a completely different group that's doing something else that is just as crazy as what Grush is describing. Craft, recovered craft, beings, biologics on ice in a facility somewhere, hardware, real material, real physical stuff that we can actually pick up and look at on a table, like Bob Lazar described in the S4 documentary and in all of his experiences. Now, here is Bigelow talking to Knapp again about the deal that he was trying to negotiate with the CIA to get his hands on some craft. Now, this is going to take a minute to explain, so just bear with me while he goes through this.
I think
And then we'll come back and talk about it.
incredibly newsworthy. As part of the agreement that you signed with DIA, there were provisions that you would modify Bigelow Aerospace plant in anticipation of receiving some materials. It doesn't say what those materials are, but you allowed me to talk about it before Congress. Can we go into that?
Well, go ahead.
You sound so enthused. Materials meaning from somewhere else, right? Or you didn't know where they're from.
Well, let me just shift a little bit to the chair here. So I didn't even mention it to Lacatski or to anybody. I had my own approach to becoming SAPT, to being an unacknowledged special access program. That's at a very high level, and the only way that happens is if you have a need to know that is so serious that it behooves people in the know to embrace you, to give you information.
Okay. Pay really, really close attention to how he explains. Listen to his phrasing here. Listen to what he says. He says, I had a different approach to becoming SAPT, right? Like he wanted to get into the special access program orbit so he could get information about what's going on with some of this stuff. Now, this is all going to come together in a minute, but listen to how he explains it. It's really key to the whole thing. You have to pay really close attention. I'll shut up.
Know that is so serious that it behooves or to anybody. I had my own approach to becoming SAPT, to being an unacknowledged special access program. That's at a very high level, and the only way that happens is if you have a need to know that is so serious that it behooves people in the know to embrace you, to give you information only as it applies to your situation. And so Matt's giving us a message here. So I gotta.
Well, we can keep going. We'll just cut it in half.
Well, we can also start this in a next show too.
I think Matt is the camera guy who is telling, probably trying to signal Bob that they're going to run out of recording space in a minute. So they gotta
Okay.
wrap it up. Yes.
So, and let me just conclude this part of our podcast with this, that my personal approach was I could offer something to aerospace companies that had hardware and different materials, different things. And there was something that they didn't have, none of them had, that I could create.
Really? There's something they needed that they didn't have that Bigelow had. I wonder what it was. What does Bob Bigelow do?
That gave me a reason to have a need to know, because I needed to know in order to provide them with what I could provide them with. I needed to have enough information as to what I was having to accommodate in order for them to have the best new advantage that they currently had none whatsoever in being able to do something.
Okay, this is Bigelow Aerospace designs inflatable habitats that can be launched into space on a conventional rocket and then inflated once they're in space to create something that no one else can make. A giant, enormous, cavernous, enclosed space floating in the vacuum that people can work in and operate in and possibly store machinery in or a craft. But imagine a gigantic space station, I don't know, 2,000 cubic meters. What could you do in a space that size? Think about it. That's what he has to offer.
New advantage that they currently had none whatsoever in being able to do something.
We will get into the details if you're willing to go that far. Just the contract you signed with DIA for AAWSAP.
You can see these inflatable habitats behind George here on this poster. If you look up Bigelow Aerospace, you'll see a lot more of this stuff, but they're talking about just the size. Like this one back here is approximately 33.5 meters long, and the scale of these things is pretty impressive.
Signed with DIA. Provided for you making some modifications to the Bigelow Aerospace plant. And what you had told me back in those days was you spent a lot of your own money to make that happen. It did happen, right? You did prepare for some eventualities.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. All right. I mean, we can cut that out too if you want, but it was in the New York Times story. Bigelow Aerospace made some changes to its aerospace plant.
Well, we were always building and expanding that whole facility all the time, and you know we have a 12-story bay, 120 feet. We have 106-foot hook height. We have a mock-up of a future expandable spacecraft that is over 2,000 cubic meters. The International Space Station is only 935 cubic meters, and that includes the American side, the Russian side, the European module, the Japanese module, and the Americans only have about 450 cubic meters of that 935. That's the only thing that we actually own, that we have on the American side. And our first 3 modules were created by Russia because we didn't have any experience. Speaking on behalf of NASA. We didn't have any experience with habitable systems. They did with the Mir. You know, they had Almaz. They had spacecraft before we did, and they had propulsion systems stronger than we had initially. Before we went to the moon in the late 50s, early 60s, they could throw more mass than we could. So that was from a nuclear bomb deliveries perspective, that was a huge concern. So we were in a race, more than just going to the moon. We were in a race to have delivery power that equal or surpassed theirs. I'm just thinking of, we were always expanding things, and we built very large mock-ups, and we could do systems. Our small craft, expandable system, was 330 cubic meters. 75% of the entire space that the Americans already have on the ISS, and 3 times the size of an average module. Average metallic system on the ISS is about 105, 110 cubic meters. Our B330 is 330. But we could do one, if we wanted to do one of 600, we could do a 600 cubic meter and have tremendous margins of safety. And so we did a mock-up of 2,000 cubic meters. And so we were doing things bigger and larger so you can accommodate bigger and more massive stuff.
This
is my question. He says we did a mock-up of a 2,000 cubic meter inflatable space station habitat, whatever you want to call it, module, that would have tremendous safety margins. Well, he said the 600 cubic meter one would, but they mocked up a 2,000 cubic meter module. It's unclear, and I think there's a way to find out this answer. It's unclear to me if that mock-up was part of the deal that he was trying to negotiate with these aerospace companies regarding transferring technology over. If maybe there was some way that by creating an enclosed habitat of approximately 2,000 cubic meters that could be in orbit indefinitely, that would allow you to, I don't know, store and operate or store and study and work on hardware in zero G, allowing you to do things you couldn't do on Earth. Maybe that was of tremendous value for them.
Well, reasons. There are no labs to speak of. There are no manufacturing facilities in space. If we had them, there are things you could do in zero gravity that you can't do on Earth, right?
Now, there's an idea.
Yeah. I mean, and Bigelow Aerospace was building these inflatable habitats that were so much stronger than metal frames and much more transportable, cheaper to get them up there, cheaper to use, but they were safer, and no one had it.
So far less expensive. It's unbelievable. The difference, the delta in cost. I mean, we spent $100 billion to build the ISS as it currently exists. $100 billion back in dollars in $2,000 values. 26 years ago, and we can build an order of that. We can have a system that would be 1/20th of that cost and be larger.
Okay, this gets into the part of the conversation that really excites me, because this is where the rubber really meets the road. Bigelow Aerospace makes inflatable space habitats. They can already, with their current level of technology and understanding and engineering capability, produce a mock-up. Probably, he said, they could build a 2,000 cubic meter enclosed space inflatable habitat that could be launched into orbit. I wonder, what could Bigelow do if Bigelow was given access to materials from crash recoveries that were 100, 1,000 times stronger than steel, thinner than a sheet of tinfoil? What could you do with metamaterials that you got from aerospace companies that needed to divest themselves of this technology? If you could create a situation where you could negotiate a trade of sorts and you could get your hands on some of this material, suddenly your engineers would have tools to work with that would give you, I mean, it sounds to me like Bigelow Aerospace already occupies a very, very unique corner of the aerospace world. I don't know this for sure because I don't have a huge wealth of knowledge about all these different aerospace companies and what they do. But to the best of my understanding, there aren't many companies building inflatable space habitats. Bigelow is probably the only one that well, it is the only one that jumps to mind. So we know, and if you hang out with me on this channel, we talk about it a lot here, that the next century, the game is getting out into the solar system, colonizing the planets of our solar system, mining the asteroid belt, building a colony on the moon, getting to Mars. Like, that's where the next trillions are going to be made. There are trillions of dollars of value locked up or inaccessible in the solar system. The Expanse is a great TV series and book series that goes into this in really cool ways. Our friend Tom Jane is on that show. And if you are an aerospace billionaire that is playing in this space and you're looking out at the next 50, 100 years and you're going, well, what do I have to offer? What can I bring to the table? If you are building inflatable space habitats and you had access to technology that was 100, 1,000 years ahead of where we are today, imagine what you could do. And imagine the value, just the pure dollar value of something like that. What could you do if your engineers and your design team had access to things that no other company has access to, or most companies don't have access to? And this gets at the heart of the whole thing, the whole question of what is Bigelow doing here? Why is he doing it? And why is he doing it this way? Hold on. Sorry, guys, I had an alien invasion of my own. I have to wrap it up here. I was just informed by my producer, my little producer, that I have to wrap it up. But if this kind of is a good point to end it all on. The whole idea is if you know that there are trillions of dollars to be made and you're in a unique position to build something that no one else knows how to build, and you suddenly had access to materials that no one else has access to, or technology or clues on how to do all this stuff, imagine what would be possible and imagine the amount of money that would be on the table for someone like you. And I think that speaks to, or it indicates to me that that's what's going on behind this podcast. It's what's probably motivating Bigelow to talk about this in the way that he's talking about it. I think Bigelow represents an emissary that has been sent out or given authorization or greenlit or whatever you want to call it. He has been tasked with making the pitch on, what do we stand to gain by some form of disclosure and some form of amnesty handed over to these aerospace companies. I don't have time to get into the full interview here. It's an hour long. You should watch the whole thing with George Knapp. But in this interview, they do talk a lot about this whole question of the sharing of technology and how that actually shakes out, and all of the different stakeholders involved in this process and how they're thinking about what's going to happen next as they move forward. And I think that it's safe to say that the gatekeepers, the high-level gatekeepers, I'm not talking about people like Dylan Borland and Matt Brown, but the high-level gatekeepers at the top echelons, people in the position of someone like a Carl Nell, senior management folks, secret keepers, gatekeepers. These people are going to be sitting on tremendously valuable information, and they know it. So they're going to leverage that to make the strongest deals that they can make. And I think that that's what we're starting to see the outlines of right now. So when you see somebody like Bigelow come forward and launch his own podcast, he's got George Knapp hosting it. He's on episode 2. We're assured that there's going to be more episodes in the near future, and he's going to get into a lot more of this stuff. It seems to me like what he's doing here is crafting the story, the narrative, not to confuse and disorient people, but to just make the case. This is what's going on, and this is why we're doing things the way that we're doing them. I've got to start to wrap it up there, but I want to show you one last little thing here, and I think this is really interesting. At the very end of the podcast, you get to the very, very end of this thing, he does something that I didn't expect. I was really surprised. I'm going to show it to you, and then we'll come back and wrap.
We'll go anywhere you want to go and have as many conversations as you want, and I think it's going to be fun.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Right.
All right. I just want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch us and listen to what we have to say. I want to thank George Knapp for being a terrific host, and we would appreciate any serious questions that you have.
I'm going to turn this music off because they'll ding me on YouTube for playing this music without a license. But he basically says, send us your questions, but don't send them, don't email them. Write them down in a letter and mail them to Bigelow Podcast, 4640 Southeastern Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89119. And they are going to, God, I hope they do. I hope they do a mailbag, like an old-fashioned mailbag, where George reaches into like a sack and pulls out a letter. We've got a letter here in our mailbag from Julie Swanson of Skokie, Illinois. Wants to know, Bob, what kind of deal were you trying to make? How funny would that be? All right. Maidenite, thank you for the super chat. That's a great name, Maidenite. Who else? Did we miss any super chats today? We'll do one last walk through the super chats. Toxic Fart, thanks for the super chat. Owls are linked to abductions, aliens, and grays. Yes, that is not lost on me. And shortly before I had one of my very weird owl experiences, I have to tell you another crazy story. My kid was he's just about 3 years old, a little over that. And one of the very first sentences that I remember him saying to me was, I saw you on the roof last night, Daddy. Why were you on the roof last night? And this is such a weird conversation we had. And I wasn't on the roof. I haven't been on the roof since he was born. There was no reason for me to be on the roof. So it was really strange. And then right after that, I had this very weird owl experience, which left me kind of creeped out, but also curious and interested to learn more. So anyway, what else? Last thoughts, people, before we go. Wrath of Conti, even thank you. Get your coffee and merch. Go to teamnightshift.com. You can support the show if you really like hanging out and having these conversations. Go there. You can click on the coffee link. You can also, below this video on YouTube, it should be linked there. You can get yourself some Night Shift, the coffee. This is our actual in-house blend. We make our own coffee right here at Night Shift headquarters. I have a great partnership with a company that does this. And if you open it up inside, these beans are in there. These are the Colombian and Mexican beans that I chose from all of the different roasts and varieties that are available. And what's cool about this stuff is these beans are not roasted until you place your order. So they're stored green until you order them. Then they're roasted and shipped to you within 48 hours of your order. So it's the freshest coffee. I swear to God, when you make it, if you get a pack, if you order it and you get some and you grind the beans yourself and you pour boiling water in a French press over these grounds, you are going to see the foam, the crema that comes off of this. It's like it's almost like a chocolate milkshake. It foams up and gets so frothy. And that is a sign of freshness. When you look at your beans and you're pouring the hot water onto the grinds and you see that start to bloom like that, it means that the beans haven't been sitting out. They are fresh, and that's all the off-gassing coming off of the beans. Super fresh, delicious, amazing coffee. Go there. You can subscribe, and you can get a 10% discount on your order every month. You throw us about $23 a month. We send you the coffee, and you support the channel. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a great way to support the show. And lastly, but not least, if you are interested in hanging out with us and doing some of these more interactive things, I'm going to be doing some stuff on the Patreon. With our special projects division, we're going to be doing some AI tools and classes and workshops. It's a lot of fun. It's a very cool group. And we're just getting started. We've done a couple of meetings now. We're finding our groove, and we're getting into the swing of things. And we're going to do another one Saturday for raw clotting with Laura Ackerman. She's going to be walking us through the final phase of this project. And from there, the sky's the limit, gang. So you can come there and support the show that way. You can participate in our monthly conference call. You can hang out and get on the group chat. It's a pretty cool group. What else? We'll be back tomorrow, Doomer Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Be here. We'll have Xander. Pavel will be with us. I believe Dan is also going to be joining us if he's not out doing something extraordinary with his celebrity friends. He's friends with all the celebrities. I think he was hanging out with Johnny Depp last week. That's why he couldn't be on the show. But he's going to be back, I think, tomorrow. And we're going to talk about what else? We're going to talk about Skywatcher. We're going to talk, of course, about this Bigelow thing. We're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff that happened this week. And we've got some cool, fresh news from Pavel that he's been covering on his channel. He'll be here to tell us all about it. And that's it for now. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for supporting the show. Thanks for participating in the chat. And Dan is the coolest dude ever. Yes, Dan is the coolest dude ever. That is true. Excited for that too. Thanks, Little Sparrow Tarot. Best name ever. I love it. The coffee keeps me going every day. Wrath of Kant, even she's a subscriber. Loves the coffee. Go there. You can read the reviews. They're in, and they are spectacular. I wouldn't steer you wrong, I promise, because it's my thing. It's what I do. I drink. I've had 3 of these today. Okay, each one of these is like 4 cups of coffee. I've had, so I'm on like 12 cups now. Trust me, I know good coffee when I taste it. This is the best. That's it, guys. I'll shut up now. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you soon. See you back here tomorrow, actually. And until then, keep looking up.